The champagne bubbles tickled Ava's nose as she scrolled through social media, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. Her ex-husband Richard, a man who once scoffed at her dreams and belittled her ambitions, was now plastering his engagement photos all over Instagram. His new fiancée, a stunning blonde named Brittany, dripped in diamonds and radiated an almost unsettling level of smugness. Ava, meanwhile, was still piecing together her life after their acrimonious split, working long hours as a freelance graphic designer. Little did Richard and Brittany know, as they preened for the cameras, that fate was about to deliver a twist so monumental, so utterly unbelievable it would shatter their carefully constructed facade of happiness and catapult Ava into a world beyond their wildest imaginations. A phone call, a name she barely recognized, and a revelation that would change everything, forever. Ava's modest apartment, usually a sanctuary of creativity, with its scattered sketches and vibrant mood boards, felt suffocating that evening. Richard's engagement announcement had landed like a punch to the gut, stirring up a cocktail of resentment and lingering hurt she thought she had long since processed. They had been together for 8 years, married for 5, and his sudden departure for a younger woman had left her feeling discarded and undervalued. Brittany, with her perfectly sculpted features and an air of effortless wealth, seemed to embody everything Ava wasn't, or at least everything Richard now apparently desired. As Ava stared at the flawless images, Richard beaming Brittany's hand prominently displaying a colossal engagement ring, her phone buzzed, pulling her from her self-pity. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Hesitantly, she answered. "Hello, Miss Ava." Ava Sterling, a crisp, formal voice inquired. "Speaking. My name is Mr. Jonathan Albright, and I'm a senior partner at Albright and Stern Attorneys at Law. I'm calling regarding the estate of Mr. Charles Blackwood." Ava frowned. The name was vaguely familiar, a philanthropic billionaire who had recently passed away, his death making headlines due to his extensive charitable work. She couldn't fathom why his lawyers would be contacting her. "I'm sorry, Mr. Albright, but I don't believe I ever met Mr. Blackwood," Ava replied, a knot of confusion tightening in her stomach. There was a brief pause on the other end. "That is unexpected. Mr. Blackwood named you specifically in his will, Ms. Sterling. He has bequeathed to you the majority of his estate." Ava's hand trembled, and she almost dropped her phone. I don't understand. There must be some mistake. I assure you, Ms. Sterling, there is no mistake. We have conducted thorough due diligence. Mr. Blackwood left detailed instructions. We would like to schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss the details. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A billionaire's fortune. To her, it was utterly surreal, like a plotline from a melodramatic movie. She managed to stammer out an agreement to meet the following morning, her mind reeling with disbelief. As she hung up, her gaze fell back on Richard and Brittany's beaming faces on her phone screen. A strange sense of detached amusement flickered within her. Their perfect little world was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Sleep evaded Ava that night. Her mind raced, trying to piece together any possible connection to Charles Blackwood. She racked her brain, searching for a forgotten encounter, a chance meeting. Nothing. The name remained stubbornly unfamiliar. The sheer improbability of the situation was overwhelming. Could this be some elaborate prank? A cruel twist of fate? Yet the lawyer's voice had been so professional, so matter-of-fact. The following morning, dressed in the most presentable outfit she owned, Ava found herself in the opulent waiting room of Albright and Stern. The hushed atmosphere, the rich mahogany furniture, and the discreetly dressed staff all spoke of wealth and power. A nervous flutter danced in her stomach. Mr. Albright, a distinguished man with silver hair and kind eyes, greeted her warmly and led her to a spacious office overlooking the city. He presented her with documents thick and filled with legal jargon confirming the unbelievable truth. Charles Blackwood, a man she had never knowingly met, had indeed left her the bulk of his multi-billion-dollar fortune. Ms. Sterling, Mr. Albright began, his tone gentle. Mr. Blackwood was a very private man. His will is quite specific, but he did not elaborate on the reasons for this particular bequest. We understand this must come as a shock. Shock was an understatement. Ava felt like she was living in a dream, a bizarre, unbelievable dream. I just don't understand why me, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. We have explored every possibility, Ms. Sterling. Our investigation has revealed no familial connection, no business dealings. It remains a mystery to us as well. As Mr. Albright outlined the extent of her inheritance, a sprawling real estate portfolio, significant holdings in various companies, and a substantial amount of liquid assets. Ava's head swam. It was more money than she could ever have imagined, a life-altering sum that would forever change the trajectory of her existence. Leaving the law firm in a daze, Ava clutched the documents in her hand, the weight of them feeling both literal and metaphorical. The city lights seemed to blur around her, the sounds of traffic fading into a distant hum. Her first instinct was to call her best friend Olivia, but she hesitated. How could she possibly explain this? It sounded so outlandish, so utterly impossible. As she walked, her thoughts drifted back to Richard. The petty sting of his public display of happiness now seemed insignificant in the face of this monumental revelation. A wry smile touched her lips. He thought he had traded up. He had no idea. Olivia's reaction when Ava finally managed to articulate the unbelievable news was a mixture of stunned silence and ecstatic disbelief. Are you serious, Ava? A billionaire? You? This is insane. Over celebratory takeout, Olivia peppered Ava with questions, her eyes wide with excitement. But did you ever meet him? Did you do something heroic and forget about it? Ava could only shake her head, still grappling with the sheer improbability of it all. I have absolutely no idea, Liv. It's like something out of a movie. The news of Ava's inheritance, despite her attempts at discretion, inevitably began to leak. The local news outlets picked up the story initially, focusing on the mystery surrounding the unknown beneficiary of Charles Blackwood's vast fortune. Soon Ava's name and picture were plastered across newspapers and online articles. Richard, initially oblivious, stumbled upon the news during a lunch meeting with Brittany. His face paled as he read the headline, "Local Woman Inherits Billionaire's Estate." The accompanying photo, a slightly older picture of Ava, was unmistakable. He clicked on the article, his heart pounding in his chest, and the details of her staggering inheritance swam before his eyes. Brittany, perched across the table, noticed his sudden change in demeanor. "What is it, darling? You look like you've seen a ghost." Richard could only stammer, It's Ava." Brittany's perfectly manicured eyebrows arched in disdain. "Your ex-wife? What about her? She just inherited billions." The words felt foreign and unbelievable even as he spoke them. A stunned silence descended upon the table. Brittany's initial disbelief quickly morphed into a look of calculating curiosity. The woman Richard had discarded, the woman she had perceived as an insignificant shadow of her own glamorous existence, was now one of the wealthiest people in the world. The news sent shockwaves through Richard's social circle. The friends who had subtly sided with him after the divorce, whispering about Ava's perceived shortcomings, now spoke of her in hushed, awestruck tones. The invitations to exclusive parties, which had dwindled for Ava after her separation, suddenly began to reappear. Richard, fueled by a potent mix of disbelief and regret, found himself obsessively checking Ava's social media, which had suddenly become a magnet for new followers and media attention. He saw the paparazzi shots of her leaving the law firm, her face a mask of bewildered composure. He saw the speculation swirling online, the theories ranging from a secret past relationship with Blackwood to a case of mistaken identity. He tried to rationalize it, to find some logical explanation for this unbelievable turn of events. Perhaps she had known Blackwood through some obscure charity work. Perhaps there was a distant familial connection they were unaware of. But deep down, a gnawing feeling of foolishness began to take root. He had been so quick to dismiss Ava, so certain of his upgrade, and now she was living a life of unimaginable wealth, while he was still navigating the complexities of a new relationship and the pressures of his moderately successful career. Brittany, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity. While Richard stewed in his regret, she began to subtly probe for information about Ava. She feigned sympathy when speaking to mutual acquaintances, all the while carefully gathering details about Ava's newfound status and her plans. Ava, meanwhile, was trying to navigate her new reality with a sense of cautious optimism. She hired a financial advisor, a sharp and discreet woman named Vivienne, who began the daunting task of managing her newfound wealth. Vivienne guided her through the legal and financial complexities, offering sound advice and a much-needed sense of stability in the midst of the chaos. One afternoon, as Ava was discussing investment strategies with Vivienne, her phone rang. It was Richard. Hesitantly, she answered. "Ava." "It's Richard." His voice sounded strained, almost nervous. "Richard?" she replied, her tone cool and neutral. I heard the news about Mr. Blackwood." "Yes." There was an awkward silence. Ava could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. I wanted to say congratulations," he finally said, the words sounding hollow. "Thank you, Richard. It must be, quite a shock." "It is." Another silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words and buried regrets. Perhaps we could meet for coffee sometime." Richard ventured, his tone now laced with a hint of desperation. "Just to catch up." Ava hesitated for a moment. A part of her, the part that still remembered the sting of his betrayal, wanted to hang up. But another part, the part that had always strived for grace and composure, decided on a different approach. "I'm quite busy at the moment, Richard," she said calmly. "But thank you for the offer." She ended the call, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over her. The tables had turned, and while she hadn't sought revenge, the universe had a funny way of delivering its own brand of justice. Brittany, witnessing Richard's increasingly frequent and agitated phone calls, didn't need to be a mind reader to understand his preoccupation. Ava's inheritance had cast a long shadow over their seemingly perfect relationship, exposing a raw nerve of insecurity and regret in Richard. Determined to maintain her position and perhaps even capitalize on this unexpected development, Brittany decided to take matters into her own hands. She subtly began researching Charles Blackwood, hoping to uncover any connection between him and Ava that might shed light on this extraordinary bequest. Her initial inquiries yielded nothing. Blackwood's life had been meticulously private, his philanthropic endeavors well documented, but his personal relationships remained shrouded in secrecy. Undeterred, Brittany shifted her focus to Ava. She scrolled through Ava's social media, meticulously analyzing every post, every tagged photo, searching for any clue, any hint of a connection to the late billionaire. She even contacted some of Ava's distant acquaintances, feigning interest in catching up, her real motive being to glean any information about Ava's past. One afternoon, while having lunch with a mutual friend, Brittany casually steered the conversation towards Ava. "It's just unbelievable about Ava, isn't it?" she said, her tone carefully modulated to sound sympathetic. "I always thought she was such a sweet girl. It's hard to imagine where she would have met someone like Charles Blackwood." Carol, a kind but somewhat gossipy woman, shrugged. "Honestly, Brittany, no one knows. It's the talk of the town. Some people are saying she must have been his secret lover. Others think it's a mistake in the will." Brittany listened intently, filing away every piece of information, no matter how seemingly insignificant. She learned about Ava's quiet life, her dedication to her graphic design work, her close friendship with Olivia, and her relatively uneventful dating history post-divorce. There was no mention of any significant relationship with an older, wealthy man. Frustrated by the lack of concrete information, Brittany decided on a more direct approach. She concocted a plausible reason to reach out to Ava, hoping to gauge the situation firsthand. Using a generic email address, she sent Ava a message expressing admiration for her design work and inquiring about potential collaborations. Ava, now accustomed to a barrage of messages from well-wishers and opportunistic individuals, almost dismissed the email. But something about the polite and professional tone caught her attention. After a brief internal debate, she decided to respond, albeit cautiously. A few email exchanges followed, with Brittany carefully steering the conversation towards more personal topics, subtly probing for details about Ava's past. Ava, however, remained guarded, offering polite but vague responses. Realizing that her attempts at indirect infiltration were proving futile, Brittany decided to escalate her tactics. She confided in Richard, painting a picture of concern for Ava's well-being. "Darling," she said, her voice laced with feigned worry, "don't you think it's strange? This enormous inheritance, and no one seems to know why. What if Ava is being taken advantage of? What if there's something sinister going on?" Richard, still smarting from his own foolishness, and now viewing Ava's newfound wealth with a mixture of awe and suspicion, was more receptive to Brittany's insinuations. "I don't know, Britt. It does seem a bit odd. Perhaps you should reach out to her again," Brittany suggested, her eyes gleaming with a calculated glint. "Just as a friend. See if she's okay. You were married to her for years, Richard. You still care about her, don't you?" Richard, eager to appear magnanimous and perhaps hoping for a glimpse into Ava's new life, agreed. He sent Ava another message, this time expressing concern and offering his support. Ava, wary of Richard's sudden interest, replied with a polite but firm message assuring him that she was well and had a strong support system in place. Brittany, witnessing Richard's continued attempts to contact Ava, realized that her fiancé's lingering connection to his ex-wife could jeopardize her own plans. She decided that a more direct confrontation was necessary. She managed to obtain Ava's phone number through a mutual acquaintance and, taking a deep breath, dialed the number. Ava answered on the third ring. "Hello, Ava. It's Brittany, Richard's fiancée." Brittany's voice was saccharine sweet, a stark contrast to the steel in her eyes. Ava's heart sank. She had hoped to avoid any direct interaction with Richard's new partner. "Brittany, what can I do for you? I just wanted to reach out and congratulate you on your incredible fortune," Brittany said, the insincerity dripping from her tone. "It's truly remarkable." "Thank you," Ava replied curtly, eager to end the conversation. "I was just wondering," Brittany continued, her voice taking on a more inquisitive edge, "how you knew Mr. Blackwood. Richard and I were quite surprised by the news." Ava hesitated for a moment. She owed Brittany no explanation, but a part of her felt a strange desire to disrupt the other woman's carefully constructed sense of superiority. "That's a personal matter," Ava said coolly, "but I appreciate your curiosity." Brittany's cheerful facade wavered for a fraction of a second. "Of course. Well, I just wanted to say that if you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Richard and I would be happy to help in any way we can." The offer hung in the air, thick with thinly veiled, ulterior motives. Ava simply replied, "Thank you, I'll keep that in mind." She ended the call, a sense of unease settling over her. Brittany's sudden interest was unsettling, and she had a feeling that this was far from over. As Ava navigated the initial whirlwind of managing her inheritance, she couldn't shake the persistent question of why Charles Blackwood had chosen her. The mystery gnawed at her, a loose thread in the otherwise neatly woven tapestry of her life. Driven by a need for answers, Ava instructed Vivienne to commission a discreet and thorough investigation into Charles Blackwood's past. She wanted to know everything about him: his family, his relationships, his philanthropic work, any connection, however tenuous, to her own life. The investigation unfolded slowly, revealing a portrait of a complex and enigmatic man. Charles Blackwood had been a self-made billionaire known for his shrewd business acumen and his profound commitment to charitable causes. He had never married and had no known living relatives. His personal life had been fiercely guarded, leaving little room for speculation or gossip. Weeks turned into months, and still no discernible link between Ava and Charles Blackwood emerged. The investigators delved deeper, sifting through old records, interviewing former associates, and tracing Blackwood's activities over the past several decades. One day, Vivienne called Ava with a breakthrough. Ava, I think we might have found something. Ava's heart quickened with anticipation. What is it? Our investigators uncovered a connection to a charity organization that your mother was involved with many years ago. It was a small local initiative focused on supporting underprivileged children. Ava's mind raced. Her mother, Sarah, had always had a strong sense of social justice and had dedicated a significant portion of her time to various charitable causes. But Ava had only vague recollections of this particular organization. Tell me more, Vivienne. The organization was called Bright Futures. It was active for about 5 years in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Charles Blackwood was a significant, though anonymous, donor during that time. Your mother served on the board of directors. A flicker of recognition sparked in Ava's memory. She vaguely remembered her mother attending meetings, organizing fundraising events. Could this be the connection? Vivienne continued. We found records indicating that Mr. Blackwood took a particular interest in one of the children supported by Bright Futures. A young girl named Anya Petrova. Anya Petrova. The name struck a chord deep within Ava. It sounded familiar, yet she couldn't quite place it. Our investigators managed to track down some old photographs from the charity events, Vivienne said. There's one picture of your mother with a group of children. And in the background, there's a man who bears a striking resemblance to a younger Charles Blackwood talking to a little girl. The girl, her name tag clearly reads Anya. Ava asked Vivienne to send her the photograph immediately. When she saw it, a wave of emotion washed over her. There was her mother, her face radiant with purpose, surrounded by a group of smiling children. And in the background, a younger, less weathered version of Charles Blackwood was indeed kneeling beside a small girl with dark, expressive eyes. The girl, Anya. As Ava studied the photograph more closely, something else caught her eye. A small, almost imperceptible detail. A silver locket around Anya's neck. It was identical to one that Ava herself had owned as a child, a gift from her mother. Suddenly, fragmented memories began to surface. Snippets of conversations, fleeting images. Her mother talking about a special little girl she was particularly fond of. A story about a difficult family situation. A promise made. Ava remembered a time when her mother had seemed particularly preoccupied, making frequent phone calls in hushed tones. She had spoken of wanting to help a child in need to ensure she had a brighter future. The pieces began to fall into place, creating a picture that was both heartbreaking and profound. Anya Petrova. Could it be that she was somehow connected to Charles Blackwood? And what role had Ava's mother played in their lives? Driven by a newfound sense of urgency, Ava asked Vivienne to delve deeper into Anya Petrova's story. The investigation revealed a tragic tale. Anya's family had been struggling with severe financial hardship. Her mother was ill, and her father had abandoned them. Ava's mother, through Bright Futures, and with the support of Charles Blackwood, had become a lifeline for Anya, providing financial assistance and emotional support. Tragically, Anya's mother had succumbed to her illness a few years later. Charles Blackwood, deeply moved by Anya's plight, and perhaps feeling a sense of responsibility, had quietly taken her under his wing, ensuring she received a good education and the opportunities she deserved, all while maintaining a discreet distance to protect her privacy. As Ava absorbed these details, a profound realization dawned on her. Her mother, in her quiet and selfless way, had touched the life of this little girl, had offered her hope in a time of darkness. And Charles Blackwood, witnessing her compassion, and perhaps feeling a connection to the child her kindness had embraced, had never forgotten her. Could it be that the inheritance was not for Ava herself, but a way for Charles Blackwood to honor the memory of her mother and continue her legacy of kindness? It seemed the most plausible explanation, a testament to the enduring power of human connection and the unexpected ways in which good deeds can ripple through time. The photograph of her mother with Anya, with Charles Blackwood, watching over them in the background, became a cherished possession for Ava, a tangible link to a past she had only vaguely known and a profound understanding of the woman her mother truly was. The mystery of the inheritance hadn't been solved in the way she had initially imagined, but the truth she had uncovered was far more meaningful. Armed with the knowledge of her mother's connection to Anya Petrova, and by extension to Charles Blackwood, Ava felt a sense of clarity and purpose she hadn't experienced since the inheritance. The weight of the unknown had lifted, replaced by a profound understanding of the legacy she had unknowingly inherited. Meanwhile, Richard's curiosity about Ava's newfound wealth had morphed into an almost obsessive preoccupation. He found himself constantly checking online news articles and social media for any updates on her life. Brittany's attempts to steer his attention back to their wedding plans were met with distracted nods and vague agreements. One evening, after Richard had spent an unusually long time scrolling through his phone, Brittany finally snapped. "Richard, what are you doing? We have a caterer to finalize and you're glued to your phone." Richard looked up, his expression sheepish. "Sorry, Britt. I was just seeing if there were any updates on Ava." Brittany's eyes narrowed. "Why are you so obsessed with your ex-wife? She inherited a fortune. Good for her. Can we please focus on our own lives? It's unbelievable, that's all," Richard mumbled, turning back to his phone. Brittany's frustration reached its breaking point. She knew she needed to regain control of the situation. She decided to pay Ava a visit, hoping to glean some information and perhaps even subtly undermine her newfound confidence. Ava was at home reviewing some documents with Vivienne when her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Frowning, she went to the door and peered through the peephole. It was Brittany. A wave of annoyance washed over Ava. She had no desire to engage with Richard's manipulative fiancée. But before she could decide not to answer, Brittany rang the bell again, more insistently this time. Sighing, Ava opened the door. "Brittany, what do you want?" Brittany plastered on a saccharine smile. "Ava, so lovely to see you. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd pop in to see how you're doing." Ava raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "I'm doing fine, Brittany. Thank you for your concern. Of course, Richard and I have been so worried about you. All this sudden attention must be overwhelming." Brittany's eyes scanned Ava's apartment, taking in the tasteful but understated decor. There was no hint of the extravagant spending one might expect from a new billionaire. "I'm managing," Ava said coolly, stepping back slightly to discourage Brittany from entering. But Brittany was already stepping inside. "Oh, please let me in for a moment. I just wanted to have a proper chat." Reluctantly, Ava allowed her in. Brittany strolled around the living room, her gaze lingering on a framed photograph of Ava and her mother. "That's your mother, isn't it?" Brittany said, picking up the photo. "Richard mentioned she was a lovely woman." "Yes, she was," Ava replied, her tone hardening slightly. "It's just so incredible about the inheritance," Brittany continued, placing the photo back on the table. "Richard and I were trying to figure out how you knew Mr. Blackwood. We couldn't recall you ever mentioning him." Ava crossed her arms, her patience wearing thin. "As I said before, Brittany, that's a personal matter." Brittany chuckled lightly. Of course. But you must admit it's quite a story. A struggling graphic designer suddenly inherits billions. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale." There was a subtle undercurrent of skepticism in her voice. "Sometimes life takes unexpected turns," Ava replied evenly. Brittany's smile tightened. "It certainly does. And I'm sure Richard is just thrilled for you. He always said you were a lucky woman. Ava met Brittany's gaze, her own unwavering. Is that why he left me? Brittany. Because I was so lucky. A flicker of discomfort crossed Brittany's face, but she quickly recovered. Oh, Ava, you know how Richard can be. Impulsive. But he's so happy now. We're so happy together. She held up her hand, the enormous diamond ring sparkling under the light. Ava's gaze flickered to the ring, then back to Brittany's carefully composed face. I'm glad to hear that, Brittany. We were just wondering. Brittany continued, her tone shifting again, becoming more probing, if you had any plans for all that money. Will you be traveling the world? Buying a yacht? It must be so exciting. Ava chose her words carefully. I'm still figuring things out, but I intend to use the inheritance responsibly. Responsibly? Brittany echoed, a hint of derision in her voice. Well, I'm sure Richard would be happy to offer you some advice. He's always been good with finances. I have excellent financial advisors. Thank you, Ava replied, her voice sharp. Brittany's smile finally dropped. Look, Ava, let's be honest. This whole thing is a bit strange, isn't it? A billionaire leaving his entire fortune to someone he barely knew. There must be more to the story. Perhaps there is, Ava said calmly. But it's none of your business, Brittany. Brittany's eyes flashed with anger. It is my business when it's all anyone is talking about. It's making Richard feel uncomfortable. Perhaps Richard should focus on his upcoming wedding and his own happiness rather than dwelling on my affairs. Ava retorted, her patience finally exhausted. Brittany took a step closer, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. You think you're so clever now, don't you? Suddenly rich, suddenly important. But you're still the same. Ava, Richard left. Don't think for a second that this money changes who you are. Ava met Brittany's angry gaze without flinching. It doesn't change who I am, Brittany, but it certainly changes what I can do. She opened the door, gesturing for Brittany to leave. Brittany stood for a moment, her face contorted with fury, before flouncing out her expensive heels, clicking sharply on the hallway floor. As Ava closed the door, she felt a surge of relief. The confrontation had been unpleasant, but it had also solidified her resolve. She wouldn't be intimidated by Brittany's petty jealousy or Richard's lingering regrets. She had a new path to forge, a path guided by her own values and the unexpected legacy of her mother's kindness. The months following Brittany's unwelcome visit were a period of profound transformation for Ava. The initial shock of her inheritance had subsided, replaced by a quiet, determined sense of purpose. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that this fortune was not meant for yachts or frivolous luxuries. It was a legacy, a responsibility, and a chance to amplify the kindness her mother had embodied throughout her life. Working tirelessly with Vivienne and a newly assembled board of compassionate experts, Ava brought her vision to life. They established the Sarah's Light Foundation, a name that felt both personal and evocative of its mission to illuminate the paths of underprivileged children through education, healthcare, and access to the arts. This was not a hands-off operation for Ava. She poured her heart into it, leveraging her own skills as a graphic designer to create the foundation's branding, ensuring every element reflected the warmth and hope she wanted it to represent. She spent her days in meetings, not with fawning socialites, but with dedicated social workers and educators. She visited community centers, her designer shoes treading on worn linoleum floors, and listened to the stories of the families she aimed to help. One of the foundation's first major projects was the revitalization of a dilapidated community center in a neglected part of the city. They didn't just write a check. They funded a complete overhaul, creating a state-of-the-art library, a vibrant arts and crafts studio, and a technology lab filled with new computers. Ava was there for the grand reopening, not as a distant benefactor, demanding applause, but as a volunteer, helping children log onto the computers for the first time. The look of wonder in a young girl's eyes as she discovered a digital painting program filled Ava with a joy more profound than any amount of money could buy. She was building something real, something that would outlast her, just as her mother's quiet acts of kindness had outlasted her own life. While Ava was building a legacy, Richard and Brittany were watching their own carefully constructed world crumble. The colossal fortune that had unexpectedly entered their orbit had become a toxic presence in their relationship, an invisible third party that highlighted every crack in their foundation. Richard's obsession with Ava's new life grew with each passing day. He'd spend hours scrolling through news articles and charity websites tracking the progress of the Sarah's Light Foundation. He saw photos of Ava cutting ribbons, speaking with city officials, looking poised, confident, and radiant in a way he hadn't seen in years. The tension came to a head one crisp autumn evening. Brittany emerged from their bedroom, a vision in a sapphire blue gown, ready for a high-profile gallery opening they were meant to attend. She found Richard in the living room, still in his work clothes, his gaze fixed on the glowing screen of his tablet. "Richard, we're going to be late," she said, her voice tight with annoyance. "The car is waiting. 1 second, Britt." He mumbled, his eyes still glued to the screen. "Did you see this? Ava's foundation just pledged $1 million to the Children's Hospital. $1 million. There was an undeniable note of awe in his voice that grated on Brittany's nerves. Brittany walked over and stood between him and the tablet, her arms crossed. "Is your ex-wife's philanthropy more important than the event I have been planning for us to attend for weeks? This is a major networking opportunity for my brand." Richard finally looked up, his expression defensive. "It's not about that. It's just incredible. The things she's doing, I never would have thought." "You never would have thought what?" Brittany snapped, her voice rising. "That the boring little woman you left had it in her? Or are you just thinking about all that money you walked away from?" "That's not fair," Richard shot back, standing up. "I'm just saying she's changed. She's important now." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and sharp. Important. It was the one thing Brittany had always believed she was, and Ava was not. And we're not. Brittany's voice was dangerously low. "Is our life, our future, not important? All you do is talk about her, think about her. It's pathetic, Richard. It's like you're haunted by the ghost of a woman who is very much alive and, frankly, seems to have completely forgotten you exist. Maybe you should have thought about how important she was before you threw it all away for me." The last words were laced with a venomous insecurity. She had won him, but it was becoming terrifyingly clear that she hadn't won the prize she thought he was. Richard had no answer. He just stared at her, the gulf between them wider than ever. The gallery opening was forgotten. The evening ended in a cold, resentful silence. The opulent apartment feeling less like a home and more like a beautifully decorated cage. Ava, blissfully unaware of the drama she was inadvertently causing, was rediscovering herself. She moved into a spacious but not ostentatious penthouse apartment with a terrace that overlooked the city, and in one sun-drenched room, she set up the art studio she had always dreamed of. For the first time in a decade, she painted not for a client or a deadline, but for the sheer joy of it, the smell of turpentine and oil paints becoming a comforting balm to her soul. She hosted small dinner parties for Olivia and her old friends, the ones who had stuck by her when she had nothing. Their laughter filled her new home, and they all remarked on the change in her. The hesitant, bruised woman who had emerged from a painful divorce was gone, replaced by a confident, serene woman who was comfortable in her own skin. One quiet evening, while sketching in her studio with soft music playing in the background, a notification pinged on her laptop. It was an email with a subject line that made her pause. "A connection to your mother, Sarah, and Charles Blackwood." Her heart skipped a beat. The sender's name was Anya Petrova. With a trembling hand, she clicked it open. The email was beautifully written, eloquent and heartfelt. Anya introduced herself and gently explained her connection to Bright Futures and to Charles. She wrote of the profound impact Ava's mother had on her life, calling her a guardian angel. She then expressed her deep lifelong gratitude to Charles Blackwood, describing him not as a reclusive billionaire, but as a kind, protective, and deeply private benefactor. He spoke of your mother often, Anya wrote. He held her in the highest esteem. I believe he saw a kindred spirit in her. Now that he has passed, I feel there are things you should know, stories only I can share, that might help you understand the true depth of his gift. If you would be willing, I would be honored to meet with you and tell you in person. Ava read the email 3 times, tears blurring the words on the screen. This was it. This was the human connection she had been searching for, the key to unlocking the central mystery of her new life. This went beyond legal documents and financial statements. This was about the heart of the matter. Without a moment's hesitation, she began to type her reply, a sense of profound anticipation washing over her. She was on the verge of not just understanding her inheritance, but of understanding a part of her mother's life she had never known. A new beginning had led her to the precipice of an old hidden story, and she was more than ready to hear it. The late autumn sun cast a warm golden glow through the large windows of the Gilded Spoon. A quiet, elegant bistro Ava had chosen for their meeting. It felt appropriately serene for a conversation that carried the weight of unspoken history. Ava had arrived early, her hands clasped around a warm mug of tea, a nervous energy thrumming just beneath her calm exterior. She had replayed this moment in her mind 100 times, wondering what Anya would be like, what secrets of Charles Blackwood's life she might hold. When Anya walked in, Ava knew her instantly. She had the same dark, expressive eyes from the photograph, though they were now framed by the wisdom and warmth of a woman who had lived a full life. She moved with a gentle confidence, her smile genuine as she spotted Ava and made her way to the table. Ava, I'm Anya. It's so wonderful to finally meet you, Ava said, standing to greet her. The handshake turned into a brief, warm hug, a spontaneous gesture that seemed to dissolve any initial awkwardness. The connection was immediate, a strange and comforting sense of familiarity bridging the gap of their unknown shared past. They started with the easy topics: Anya's work as a beloved history teacher, her 2 grown children, her quiet life in a suburban town not far from the city. Ava in turn spoke of her passion for graphic design and the whirlwind of the past few months, carefully omitting the more chaotic details involving Richard and Brittany. Their conversation flowed not like one between strangers, but like one between old friends catching up after a long time apart. Inevitably, the talk turned to the 2 people who connected them across time, her mother Sarah and Charles Blackwood. Your mother Anya, began, her eyes softening with a distant fondness, was a force of nature. So gentle, yet so determined. I was just a little girl, lost and scared, and she was a light. She never treated me like a charity case. She'd bring me books, sit with me for hours, helping with my homework. She saw a person, not a project. Ava felt a swell of pride and a familiar ache of loss for the mother she missed so dearly. She always had a way of seeing the best in people. I remember her spending countless evenings working on things for bright futures, and it was her passion. It was more than that, Anya said, leaning forward slightly. It was a lifeline. For me, and I think in a way for Charles too. She paused, taking a sip of water. He never visited the charity centres himself, not openly. He insisted on anonymity. But he would ask me about your mother. He wanted to know everything she was doing, every child she helped. He admired her spirit more than I can possibly say. Anya's gaze became more intense, her voice lowering as if sharing a profound secret. He once told me that her compassion reminded him of someone he had lost, someone very dear to him, from his past. He said it was like seeing a ghost, but in the most beautiful way imaginable. This was it, the edge of the mystery. Ava's heart quickened. Did he ever say who it was? Anya looked down at her hands, a flicker of old sadness in her expression. It was his sister. He lost her when they were both very young adults. They were incredibly close, inseparable as children. He carried that loss with him his entire life. It was a wound that never truly healed. Ava listened captivated. The portrait of the stoic private billionaire was cracking, revealing the grieving brother beneath. She was beginning to understand the man, not just the name on a legal document. He told me your mother had the same fire in her soul. Anya continued. The same unwavering belief in doing good, the same quiet strength. It fascinated him. He felt a connection to her, even from a distance. It was why he supported Bright Futures so generously. He was in his own way supporting the spirit of his sister. Anya reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, she carefully extracted the silver locket, its surface worn smooth with time. She held it in her palm for Ava to see. It was identical to the one Ava remembered from her childhood. He gave this to me on my 10th birthday, Anya said softly. He told me it was a replica of one that had belonged to his sister. He said it was a symbol of hope and protection, a reminder that even when things seem dark, there is always kindness in the world. Ava stared at the locket, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in her mind, not yet fitting together, but growing closer. His sister. Did he ever tell you her name? Anya met her gaze, her dark eyes holding a world of unspoken meaning. Yes, her name was Sarah. The name landed in the quiet bistro with the force of a thunderclap. Sarah. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Her mother's name. It couldn't be a coincidence. The world seemed to tilt, the muted chatter of the other patrons fading into a distant hum. A coincidence of that magnitude felt impossible, a statistical anomaly that defied logic. My mother's name was Sarah Ava, managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Anya's expression didn't register surprise. Instead, it was one of gentle confirmation, as if she had been waiting for Ava to make this very connection. I know, dear. Charles knew too. It was the first thing that drew him to her file at the charity. The name. It was what made him look closer. A torrent of fragmented memories rushed through Ava's mind. Old stories her grandmother used to tell, whispers of family from long ago. Relatives who had moved away, letters that had stopped coming. She remembered her mother's old leather-bound photo albums tucked away in a cedar chest in the attic. She hadn't looked through them in years, not since her mother had passed. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone, her heart pounding against her ribs. She navigated to the cloud storage where she had painstakingly digitized all the old family photos years ago, a project she'd undertaken to preserve them. She scrolled rapidly through folders that labeled childhood, holidays, grandparents. Finally, she found it, an album titled Mom's Early Years. Her fingers flew across the screen, swiping past faded black and white images of her mother as a baby, a schoolgirl, a teenager. And then she saw it. The photograph. It was sepia-toned, the edges slightly frayed in the digital scan. It showed a young woman with a luminous smile and eyes that held the same spark as the billionaire in the newspapers, standing proudly next to a handsome, dark-haired young man. The woman's resemblance to Charles Blackwood was undeniable. They shared the same strong jawline, the same intelligent gaze. On the back of the original print, in her grandmother's elegant cursive, were the words, Sorrel and Thomas on their engagement day, 1960. So much love. Without a word, Ava turned the phone around and showed the screen to Anya. Anya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at the image. Oh my goodness, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. That's them. That is Sarah Blackwood and Thomas. Thomas Sterling, your grandparents. She looked up at Ava, her face a mixture of awe and joyous disbelief. Charles looked for them for years, for decades. The final piece of the puzzle slammed into place, and the full breathtaking picture was revealed. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't just an admiration for her mother's spirit. Charles Blackwood, the enigmatic billionaire, was not just a benefactor. He was her uncle. Her mother, Sarah Sterling, was his long-lost sister. Anya, seeing the shock and confusion on Ava's face, began to fill in the gaps, relaying the story, as Charles had told it to her over many years. They were orphaned young, she explained. They only had each other, but they were ambitious. Charles wanted to build an empire. Your mother, Sarah, fell in love with Thomas Sterling, a kind man with dreams of a quiet life as a university professor. After they married, Thomas was offered a position at a university on the other side of the country. It was a huge opportunity. She described the painful farewell at the train station. There had been no fight, no dramatic fallout, just a simple, sad drifting apart, a consequence of geography and an era before instant communication. They promised to write, Anya said, and they did for a while. But Charles was working relentlessly, moving from city to city, chasing deals. Your grandparents were starting a family. Letters got lost. Addresses changed. Life, as it often does, got in the way. By the time Charles had built his fortune and had the resources to truly search, years had passed. The trail had gone cold. He hired private investigators, but they could find nothing. He never knew he had a niece. The revelation washed over Ava in waves. Shock, disbelief, a profound, aching sadness for the lost years, for the family connection her mother never knew she had. Her mother had lived her entire adult life believing her only brother was lost to her, perhaps gone forever. And Charles had lived a colossally wealthy and powerful man, utterly alone, believing his only family was a ghost in a photograph. So when he found your mother through the charity, Ava trailed off, the implication dawning on her. He was overjoyed and terrified, Anya confirmed. He had found his sister's legacy. He saw you in the file too, her daughter, his niece. He wanted to reach out to reconnect, but so much time had passed. He was afraid of being seen as a stranger trying to buy his way back into a family he'd lost. He was filled with regret, with a sense of failure for not having tried harder sooner. So he watched from a distance. He made sure you and your mother were always safe, always provided for in subtle ways you would never notice. And he decided that when he was gone, he would give you everything. It wasn't just a gift, Ava. It was an apology. It was a homecoming. Tears streamed down Ava's face, not of sadness, but of a deep, resonant understanding. The inheritance wasn't a random act of fate. It was a bridge across a chasm of lost decades. It was a story of love loss and reunion written in the language of a last will and testament. She looked at Anya, whose own eyes were shining with tears. This woman wasn't just a link to the past. She was a keeper of secrets, a trusted confidant to a lonely man, and now a cherished part of Ava's own story. Ava reached across the table and took Anya's hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for telling me." They sat in silence for a long moment, two women in a sunlit bistro connected by the invisible threads of family and history. The flaunting of an ex-husband and the petty dramas of her former life seemed utterly insignificant now, like distant echoes from another lifetime. Ava's journey had led her not just to a billion-dollar fortune, but to something far more valuable, the discovery of who she was and where she came from. She looked at the photograph on her phone, at the smiling faces of the young couple who were her grandparents, and felt the presence of her mother and the uncle she never knew. Their story was no longer lost, and her own was just beginning. And so Ava's life took a turn no one could have predicted. From the sting of her ex-husband's public happiness to the bewildering shock of inheriting a billionaire's fortune. Her journey was a testament to the unpredictable nature of life and the enduring power of human connection. The flaunting of Richard and Brittany ultimately became a footnote in Ava's extraordinary story, a catalyst that propelled her towards a future filled with purpose, philanthropy, and the unexpected discovery of family. What do you think of Ava's incredible journey? Were you surprised by the final twist? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dramatic storytelling, please give this video a thumbs up. thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories. Your support means the world. Until next time.